Good morning again and welcome to Focus Nigeria, your program that puts the spotlight on topical issues in the Nigerian polity with a view to deepening democracy, rule of law and promoting good governance. We're going to be beaming our searchlight on the Nigerian economy 52 years after independence. Nigeria's economy has, to say the least, had a checkered history. All sorts of things have happened. If you look at the pre-petroleum era, when agriculture was the mainstay, it was said that things were a whole lot better than now that we have oil. All sorts of things have happened, the introduction of structural adjustment programs and all sorts of austerity measures, which do not seem to have done much to change the fortunes of the Nigerian economy. However, President Goodluck Jonathan, in his Independence Day broadcast on Monday, did reveal a few statistics that should put smiles on some faces. Yes, he did mention that the economy in the last couple of years has grown by an average of 7.1%. He also talked about the 249 new entrants into the manufacturing sector. He talked about gaining control of the oil and gas sector. All these things that have implications on our economy were mentioned in the President's address. Well, these are some of the things we're going to be putting to the test today, and I have a thick panel of discussants to address the issue. Dr. Emeka Okengwu is a development and management consultant based here in the Nigerian capital. Doc, pleasure to have you. Dr. Okengwu, are there no ways of independently verifying the authenticity of some of these figures? I mean, I would expect maybe a shadow Bureau of Statistics to carry out its own verification to find out if these statistics are genuine.
Well, I'm going to answer you with something a little bit funny.
Okay.
When the presidency was asked where they got the reports of the TI, I mean, these were newspaper reports. They said they got it from the pages of a newspaper. That's a little bit worrisome, because you see what it presents is that there's a lack of a proper substructure or some digging that can allow for us to be able to now, really colorate what figures are being banded and what figures are real. But having said that, well, let me go back to your earlier question, because it could help us. You see, when we even talk about the 7.1% growth rate, you need to talk about what has contributed to this 7.1%. It's very critical, because when you have your services and your wholesale and your telecoms, contributing between 50, 28%, 18%, and then you see even the contribution of 26% that they're claiming agriculture is contributing, it's very, very contestable. And then you come to what can actually now develop your real sector, and you go to the metal sector and you're getting figures like 0.32%, 0.1%. It begins to worry you some more. Okay? It is possible that, yes, we have this what they call development without growth. But what has occasioned it, and this is where I think we should start putting our searchlight on. What's the difference between an economy and what happens in an economy? And economics and what happens in a market? And what do we have? Do we have an economy or do we have a market?
So, Doc, what you're essentially saying, like the figures, whether it's 7.1% or whatever percent, is not really the issue.
It's inconsequential.
It's the contribution.
It's inconsequential.
Okay.
It's your substructure.
Yeah.
It's what is contributing to this. Because, I mean, if you have services contributing 50%, and you have your telecoms, and everybody now can be able to now repatriate, whatever their investments are 100%. What they're just simply doing is they're coming here to take it out. But then, because we're going to be talking about 52 years of independence, yes, you must be able to talk about what was bequeathed to you at independence.
Dr. Okengwu, Prof said something about consumption generating employment and all the other things that should go along with increased consumption. Now, this reminds me of, I mean, I'm not very good in economics, but even I knew one or two things about that. I mean, the Keynes theories and all these things. Now, these are things that a lot of people know about. I mean, there were gentlemen like you, seasoned economists like you that seem to know a lot more than people like us do. And, you know, all these things suddenly seem to look like rocket science. I mean, after 52 years, we're still grappling with things which, I mean, many of us would consider are pretty elementary. Doc, I mean, how do you explain that?
Again, let's put Nigeria on the slate and define Nigeria well. There are three sectors. I don't like to use the word economy. There are three sectors of Nigeria. You have what you call the public sector. You have what you call the private sector. You have what you call the real sector. Usually, there are two ways you develop infrastructure. You either develop infrastructure using what they call demand-driven infrastructure. Okay? At that level, it is your substructure, your production, that now develops your infrastructure. You can also develop your infrastructure from your superstructure level, where you now have politicians now deciding what infrastructure to develop, and they say, when I become governor, when I become president, when I become this, when I become that. Now, when that happens, there's usually a disconnect between your real sector, okay, that should grow your private sector, that now, you know, oversees your public sector. But what you had in Nigeria, the model, the import substitution model, created a valorization system that actually now removed our substructure and put it in other people's countries. So the substructure of our timber was no longer here in Nigeria. It was now in Britain. The substructure of our palm kernel, what was now happening was that if you go to the history of palm kernel and what you called what was giving us so much money, the export, you know, of cash crops way back in those days, was actually what made Nigeria, you know, relatively rich. But it was at a cost. And that cost was that we now lost the capacity and capability for food security. Because all our arable lands that had been used for food security had now been given up for this cash crops production. Are you listening to me? And when those who were now controlling your substructure decided that they didn't need that particular product anymore, you were at a loss to what to do with it. And then what did we begin to do? You now started now playing at agriculture at a level that is not obtainable. I have said this severally. Government, in one of the president's remarks, he was talking about transforming the agricultural sector. Probably along the line we're going to get to that. But you find out that agriculture is one of the most complex things, complex areas you can get into. Because there are givings before you can be able to now develop a proper agricultural product. Giving number one is land. Giving number two is irrigation, or what you call your water resources. Giving number three is what you call your energy. Any of these things you miss, you won't get agriculture right. But in having even done this, there is even a much more critical giving, which is now your soil and your seedling. So when you have a situation where you are importing your seeds, you're importing your fertilizer, this way you now have a disconnect between your mining sector and your agricultural sector. So what am I trying to say here? You see, what had happened before had happened because you weren't in charge. And nobody bothered to now go back and understudy where we got it wrong. I thought that the transitional agenda of the president, I mean, I don't know if it's time for us to get into this FDI because it's important to touch on it.
We will get there.
Okay?
I would want to stay on the floor of this agriculture.
So you see, what has happened is that agriculture has created more problems. Remember that it was in the course of agriculture that the natural resources funds were diverted for the importation of rice. Remember also that the rice that we're importing in this country is actually rice that are not less than 10 years old. And we're importing from countries. Go and look at the statistics. Nigeria has, I think, is the 9th largest land, arable land owner in the world. South Africa has only 13% of their total land mass arable. In the past 6-7 years, as much as a lot of their land is challenged, they have produced 9 million metric tons in excess of their national projection. Do you know why? Because there is a proper alignment with the factors and variables that can lead to agricultural development. This is what the white man did, which was why he was able to take out so much cash crops from our systems. He identified the land, he did soil tests, he identified the proper seedlings. If your grandfather or your grandmother is alive, ask any of them. They were sharing cocoa seeds, improved cocoa seeds from research centers. And those research centers were the best funded centers in the country then. Today, the Ministry of Science and Technology, says to you, we have only been given less than 30% of the budget. These are people who are supposed to be the people researching. That's where you have NAPTIP. That's where you have the other one for biotechnology. That's where you have Raw Materials Research Institute. So what are we talking about? Where are you getting your seeds from?
Plenty of food for thought. It's Focus Nigeria. Tweets are coming in thick and fast as they normally do. Like we usually say, if you want to be part of the program, you can like us on Facebook. And if you don't like us on Facebook, then you can follow us on Twitter. And some messages have come in. This one comes in from Usman Ibrahim. He says, why are we not talking about population control? Population is an issue when debating issues of job creation and economic growth. Another one from Aderibigbe Ademola. He says, hearing about the state of Nigeria makes me cry. No need for that. Okay, this one comes from somebody who calls himself the Shrink. He says, 800 companies may fold up for lots of reasons. Moreover, some new companies sometimes employ 5 times the labor force in others. So he's probably saying we shouldn't despair. Maybe the new entrants may come up with a lot more jobs than the ones that we've lost. I'll quickly take this one again. He says, I am unnudged to agree with Dr. Emeka and Prof. For local production to be possible, power supply has to be stable and sufficient. And I'll take this last one again from Ademola. He says, where is Bega? Well, I guess that's not an economic discussion, but I can assure you that he'll be with you a lot sooner than we think. Dr. Okengwu, you said something about this FDI. I mean, that was another high point.
Why I needed for us to take a little bite at it is that, I mean, the actual figures we were talking about was, I think, $1.4 trillion.
Yeah.
And let me leave out the big boys, who own the money, what they got, America, Europe, and all that. Let's come down to China. China got 175 billion, out of which I think they invested outside China 10 or 15 billion. Okay, Brazil got 45 billion. I think Russia got 41 billion. Nigeria actually got 9.8 billion. Okay, and we are now trying to juxtapose that against South Africa with a population of less than 40 million that got about 5 billion of that FDI. And it's not the 9.5 or 9.8 billion that should actually worry us. It's where it went to. Okay, because I mean, it basically went into the oil services sector. It went into the aviation sector. Let's not talk about the aviation sector, because I mean, it's going to be extending this thing by 1 hour. After all that money, what do you have? 3 airlines, flying and flying, with 3 tires. You understand what I'm saying? But I think what is critical is that Dr. Shua had actually mentioned flooding. And flooding is something that we should be treating as national security. Right now, let me tell you why, after all the NIMET warnings, nothing could happen. Because we've not been able to identify the place of what they call geospatial mapping.
What do you call it?
Geospatial mapping.
Geospatial mapping.
In economic development. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now would have been a very perfect time to redesign this country. Because the people you're moving, I think we should talk about that flood in Benga for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is that what icked me more was that people were telling you that they had lost their pots and pans, and you were taking bags of rice to go and give to them.
How would they cook?
Okay? Now, what I thought the federal government would have been doing right now is establishing soup kitchens, tents, where you will have doctors volunteering to go there. I mean, we'll have all these tents in all these gardens in Abuja. We have the Nigerian Air Force that should be helping. We have the Army. At this point in time, what I think, I mean, yesterday I hope I didn't hear him right. I think one of the president's aides was saying, it doesn't mean that it's only when the president, flies over a helicopter that he's shown care. Yes, he is the father of this country. He flew there when he was looking for people's votes. His presence, would be very suiting. I would have wanted to see the president in a canoe. I would have wanted him to be part of that system to say, help is on the way. I would have wanted to see Red Cross people setting up food kitchens or soup kitchens that has medical facilities in it. I would have wanted to see the members of our armed forces helping to be able to evacuate things out of people's houses. Not bags of rice. Where is the Maggi? What about the oil?
Doc, I would like to take us back to the economic aspects of something, because the point you touched on earlier was like the redesignation, I can put that word, of Nigeria in a bid to avoid the adverse effects of flooding should it come again. You want to give us a little bit more insight into what you mean?
You see what it is you want to do right now. I mean, NIMET, it is not the release of the dam that principally. It was one of the causes, because NIMET had said that based on their research, they had found a lot of moist on most of the lands across the country, and that any time there was going to be rain, I am quoting the DG of INEC, that there was going to be flooding. Yes. Okay? Now you find out that, again, the people who are affected by this flooding are basically people who live either by river banks or very close to it. What we should be talking about now is not moving these people, to highlands. It's moving them to where everybody should be safe, and then putting into perspective a proper infrastructure program that can be able to make certain that whatever waters is not released from wherever, be it Futajelon, becomes to some economic benefit to us. China is freezing rainwater. Okay? What they do is that they've put into perspective some system where they are able to capture every rain that falls, and they freeze it into ice. You see, there's so much for us to be able to do, but I think the basic thing that we need to be able to get the president to appreciate and understand is that in building a new Nigeria, he needs to build a new foundation and dig down what it is we have right now, because what we have in this country right now is what they call market infrastructure. We do not have all our rail lines. Were not built for development purposes. They were built for trade purposes. They were not even built by government. Don't forget.
We can, on a conclusive note, admit that it's bad generally. I mean, there's a global economic downturn, and Nigeria being part of the global economy cannot be isolated. But be it as it may, I mean, from what everybody's saying, there are things we can do to get our economy back on track. Where do you think the authorities should start, Prof? So, Okengwu, your closing remarks on the way forward?
The way forward is develop a substructure model. What is a substructure model? First and foremost, you must be able to cluster. There are two problems we have in this country, my brother. The first problem is our annual budget, which is why you now have an issue of, somebody now saying defend a midterm, expenditure
framework
in a budget you just approved 3, 4, 5 months ago. It doesn't make sense. What it is you need to do is to be able to now develop what you call a 4-year national development plan. When you come in as president of this country, we should give you 6 months to understudy all the files and develop a 4-year plan with a funding program. Then what you now, it is only with that 4-year plan that you can now begin to now bring your midterm, expenditure frameworks. And in doing that, if you're not able to bring the key ministries that must play together, I just told you in agriculture, I mentioned 5 factors. All these 5 variables are in 5 different ministries. So when you have a Ministry of Agriculture having a different program for Ministry of Power, it won't work. So you must be able to cluster all these ministries to one. Okay. They must be able to now form these units, and then most importantly, let us be able to now develop new economic clusters.
Yeah. I guess it's a case for a whole lot of new stuff to be done if we are to make progress in our economic front in the years to come.